I knew buying a house with a natural stream running through the backyard was special, but I never imagined it would turn into a legal nightmare that would end with criminal charges and a completely destroyed neighborhood. My name is David Chen, and I had just closed on my dream property in Boulder, Colorado. The house itself was nice, a modest three-bedroom ranch built in the 1980s, but what really sold me was the acre and a half of land that came with it. Right through the middle of my backyard ran a beautiful natural stream, clear mountain water that bubbled over smooth rocks and created the most peaceful sound you could imagine. The previous owners had done minimal landscaping, just basic maintenance, but I had big plans. I am a landscape architect by profession, so when I saw that stream, my mind immediately started racing with possibilities. I wanted to create something spectacular, a tiered waterfall feature that would work with the natural flow of the water, enhancing what was already there rather than fighting against it. I spent weeks drawing up plans, researching native plants and calculating water flow rates. This was going to be my masterpiece, visible from my back deck, and the perfect place to unwind after long days at the office. The property was part of the Meadowbrook Hills HOA, which I had researched before buying. The covenants seemed reasonable enough, mostly standard stuff about lawn maintenance, exterior paint colors requiring approval, and no commercial vehicles parked in driveways. There was a section about landscaping requiring approval for major projects, which I expected. I had dealt with HOAs before in my professional capacity, and I knew the drill. What I did not know was that the HOA president, Patricia Hendricks, was a woman with way too much time on her hands and an obsessive need to control every single aspect of the neighborhood. I first met her 3 days after moving in when she showed up at my door with a clipboard and a smile that did not reach her eyes. "Welcome to Meadowbrook Hills," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "I'm Patricia, the HOA president. I like to personally greet all our new residents and make sure they understand our community standards." She was exactly what you would picture when you think of an HOA nightmare. Mid-50s with an angular blonde bob that looked like it required weekly maintenance. Designer workout clothes that had probably never seen actual exercise, and an expression that suggested she had just smelled something unpleasant. She pushed past me into my house without waiting for an invitation. "I noticed you have quite a bit of land," she continued, walking toward my back windows. "That stream is technically on your property, but it does flow through the entire neighborhood, so any changes you make could affect other residents." "I am actually planning a waterfall feature," I said, trying to be friendly and open. "I am a landscape architect, so I will make sure everything is done properly with the right permits." Her eyes narrowed. "A waterfall? That sounds quite ambitious. You will need HOA approval for that, of course." "In fact, I will need to see detailed plans, environmental impact statements, and we will need to have a special meeting to discuss it." I pulled out my tablet and showed her the preliminary sketches. "I have been working on these designs. It will be a natural-looking tiered system using native stone. The water flow will actually improve because I am clearing out some debris and creating better channels." Patricia stared at the designs for a long moment, and I saw something flicker across her face. It was not disapproval exactly, more like jealousy mixed with fascination. "This is quite elaborate," she said quietly. "How much is something like this worth?" "The materials will run about $15,000, but I am doing the labor myself, so that saves a lot." $15,000 for a backyard feature, she repeated, and I could practically see her mental calculator working. "Well, as I said, this will need extensive review. I will need these plans submitted in triplicate, along with a $500 application fee." I blinked. $500? That seems excessive for a landscaping approval. "Those are our fees for major modifications," she said crisply. "I will email you the complete application packet. In the meantime, do not begin any work." She left, and I immediately started researching. I pulled out the HOA bylaws and read through them carefully. The application fee for landscaping was supposed to be $50, not $500. Patricia was already trying to shake me down, and I had only been in the house for 3 days. I submitted my application with the correct $50 fee and included a note citing the specific bylaw. I also submitted copies to the other 4 board members whose names were listed in the HOA directory. If Patricia wanted to play games, I was going to make sure everything was documented and above board. 2 weeks later, I received a response. The HOA board had approved my waterfall project with a few conditions: that all water flow must be maintained at current levels, no chemicals could be used in or near the stream, and I had to use native plants for landscaping. All of this was exactly what I had planned anyway, so I was thrilled. I started work the following weekend. The first phase involved clearing out years of accumulated debris from the stream, dead branches, leaves, and silt that had built up around the rocks. The water flow immediately improved, running clearer and faster. I began placing stones for the first tier of the waterfall, carefully calculating angles and depths to create the right sound and visual effect. Patricia appeared on day 3 of construction. She did not come to my door or announce herself, just stood at the property line with binoculars, watching me work. When I waved at her, she quickly lowered the binoculars and walked away. Over the next few weeks, she became a constant presence. She would drive by slowly multiple times a day, sometimes parking on the street to watch. She started showing up at odd hours, early morning or dusk, always with those binoculars. It was creepy and intrusive, but technically she was on public property, so there was not much I could do about it. The waterfall was coming together beautifully. I had created 3 tiers, each about 18 inches tall, with pools between them where the water could collect before flowing down to the next level. I planted native Colorado columbine, wild roses, and blue spruce seedlings around the feature. The sound was incredible. A soothing rush of water that could be heard from my deck, but was not so loud as to be annoying. My neighbors on either side, the Johnsons and the Reardons, came over to see the finished product and were incredibly complimentary. Mark Johnson, a software engineer who worked from home, said the sound of the water was so relaxing he could hear it from his home office and it helped him focus. "This is amazing work," he said, taking pictures with his phone. "You should be proud of this." "Thanks, man." "It turned out better than I hoped." "Has Patricia been bothering you about it?" he asked, lowering his voice even though we were alone in my yard. "She watches me work sometimes. It is weird, but whatever." Mark shook his head. "Be careful with her. She has made life hell for other people in this neighborhood. The Martinsons 2 streets over wanted to add a sunroom, and she fought them for 8 months until they finally gave up. She is relentless when she fixates on something." His words were prophetic, though I did not realize it at the time. The trouble started about 6 weeks after I finished the waterfall. I came home from work on a Tuesday evening and immediately knew something was wrong. The sound of the water was different, quieter. I walked out to the backyard and my stomach dropped. The water flow through my stream had decreased to maybe 30% of normal. Instead of the healthy rush that powered my waterfall, there was barely a trickle limping over the stones. The pools between tiers were getting low, and the bottom tier was not flowing properly at all. I walked upstream along the property line, trying to figure out what had happened. Had there been work done on the municipal water system? Was there a drought I had not heard about? But when I reached the upper corner of my property, where the stream entered from the green belt behind the neighborhood, I saw something that made my blood boil. Someone had dug a trench diverting water from the stream into a different direction, away from my property. The trench was crude but effective, lined with stones and directing maybe 70% of the stream flow toward the east, where it was soaking into the hillside instead of following its natural course through my land. This was not natural. Someone had deliberately sabotaged my water supply. I took photos from every angle, then called the non-emergency police line to report property damage. An officer showed up about an hour later, a younger guy named Officer Martinez who seemed genuinely interested in the problem. "That's definitely man-made," he said, examining the trench. "Question is who did it and whether you can prove it." "The green belt is HOA common property," I explained, "so it would have to be someone with access to that." "Could be anyone in the neighborhood, though," he pointed out. "Do you have security cameras?" I did not, which I was now kicking myself for. "No, but I can install some." He wrote up a report documenting the damage and the diverted stream. "I would also contact a lawyer if I were you. This could be a civil matter, especially if someone damaged HOA common property without authorization." That night I could not sleep. I kept thinking about Patricia's obsessive watching, her fascination with the Waterfall plans, her bizarre behavior. She was the HOA president, which meant she had keys and access to all common areas. But why would she do this? What could she possibly gain from diverting my stream? The next morning, I sent a certified letter to the HOA board documenting the diversion and requesting immediate action to restore the natural water flow. I also installed 4 security cameras covering different angles of my property, including one with a clear view of where the stream entered my land. Patricia responded within 24 hours, but not in the way I expected. She sent an official HOA notice claiming that my waterfall feature was causing erosion problems in the greenbelt, and that I needed to cease all water features immediately and restore the land to its original condition. I read the letter 3 times, my anger growing with each pass. This was complete fiction. My waterfall had not caused any erosion at all. In fact, by clearing debris and creating proper channels, I had improved the stream flow and reduced erosion. But now she was creating a paper trail suggesting that I was the problem. I drove up to the greenbelt that evening to document the actual conditions. What I found made my hands shake as I took photos. The area where Patricia had diverted the stream was already showing signs of serious problems. Without the natural channel to guide it, the diverted water was soaking into the hillside and destabilizing the soil. There were small washouts starting to form, and I could see where water was seeping out further downhill, creating muddy patches on other people's properties. This was going to get much worse. The greenbelt had a fairly steep slope in some areas, and uncontrolled water flow was one of the fastest ways to create massive erosion problems. Patricia, in her obsession with disrupting my waterfall, had created a ticking time bomb. I documented everything and sent copies to all 5 board members, not just Patricia. I explained exactly what was happening and why the diversion needed to be removed immediately before serious damage occurred. I also sent a copy to my insurance company and to a lawyer I had worked with on previous projects, Tom Bradshaw. Tom called me the next morning. "David, this is a mess. You are right about the erosion problem, but proving Patricia did this is going to be tough without direct evidence." "I know she did it," I said. "She has been obsessed with my waterfall since day one. Knowing it and proving it are different things. But here is what we can do. We can demand the HOA board restore the stream to its natural flow immediately. We can cite the erosion danger, which is legitimate and documented. If they refuse, we can get an injunction forcing them to act. How long will that take? Could be weeks, maybe months." I closed my eyes, frustrated. "Tom, that hillside is not stable. If we get a heavy rain before this is fixed, we could be looking at serious property damage. Then document everything and make sure you have it on record that you warned them. If damage occurs, you want to make sure the liability falls on whoever made this decision." I followed his advice, sending another detailed letter with photos and even calculations showing the soil saturation rates and erosion projections. I copied every board member and sent it via certified mail so there would be proof of delivery. 3 days later, Patricia showed up at my door with 2 other board members I had not met before, Sandra Wilkes and Robert Chen, no relation. Sandra was a tired-looking woman in her 60s who seemed uncomfortable being there. Robert was younger, maybe 40, wearing business casual and carrying a tablet. "We received your complaints about the greenbelt," Patricia said, not bothering with pleasantries. "The board has discussed it, and we have determined that your waterfall feature is the source of the problem." "That makes no sense," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "The waterfall is on my property, using water from a natural stream that has flowed through here for decades. Someone diverted that stream, and now we have unstable soil in the greenbelt." "Your feature has increased water usage," Patricia insisted. "No, it has not. Water flows through it, that is how streams work. I am not adding water or removing water, just directing the existing flow over decorative stones." Robert spoke up. "We had an environmental consultant look at the situation." "Really? Who?" He glanced at his tablet. "Patricia arranged it. The report says excessive water concentration from your feature is causing downstream problems." "Can I see this report?" "It is HOA property," Patricia said quickly. "But the conclusions are clear. You need to dismantle the waterfall." I looked at Sandra, who had not said anything. "Do you agree with this?" She looked uncomfortable. "I think we should table this and do more research." "The decision has been made," Patricia snapped. "We are giving you 30 days to remove the feature and restore natural water flow." After they left, I immediately called Tom. "They are claiming I caused the erosion and demanding I remove the waterfall." "Do not touch it," he said firmly. "Do not change anything. We are going to fight this, and we are going to need an actual environmental expert to document what is really happening." I hired a hydrologist named Dr. Rebecca Sanchez, who came out the next day to assess the situation. She was in her 40s, with sun-weathered skin and a no-nonsense attitude that I immediately appreciated. She spent 3 hours examining the stream, the waterfall, the diversion, and the erosion patterns developing in the greenbelt. Her findings were damning for Patricia. Dr. Sanchez determined that the stream diversion was recent, within the last 2 months based on vegetation disturbance and soil conditions. The waterfall feature showed no signs of causing erosion and was actually improving water flow by removing debris. The diversion, however, was creating dangerous conditions on the hillside with saturation levels approaching critical thresholds. "Whoever did this does not understand basic hydrology," she told me, shaking her head. "Natural streams follow specific paths for good reasons. When you divert water onto a slope without proper drainage systems, you are basically creating conditions for a mudslide. How bad could it get? If you get several inches of rain in a short period, that entire hillside could let go. We are talking potentially tens of thousands of cubic feet of mud and debris sliding downhill. Any houses in the path would be severely damaged." I felt sick. "What can we do?" "The diversion needs to be removed immediately and the stream restored to its natural channel. Then we need to assess damage to the hillside and possibly install drainage systems to stabilize it. This is not a small fix." Her report, complete with photos, measurements, and projections, went to Tom, who immediately filed for an emergency injunction. We went before a judge 3 days later. Judge Martha Kowalski was a stern woman in her 60s, who clearly did not appreciate having her morning interrupted with what probably seemed like a petty HOA dispute. Patricia showed up with an HOA lawyer, a slick-looking guy named Dennis Park, who had probably never set foot on a hiking trail in his life. Tom presented Dr. Sanchez's report and her testimony. She explained the erosion danger clearly and professionally, showing photos of the growing washouts and wet areas on the hillside. She pointed out that the diversion was crude and dangerous, and that time was a critical factor. Dennis presented the supposed environmental report that Patricia had commissioned, except when Tom demanded to see the credentials of whoever wrote it, things got interesting. The report was signed by Dr. Michael Harrison, environmental consultant. But when Tom looked him up, it turned out Michael Harrison had a doctorate in education, not environmental science, and his consulting company was registered just 4 months ago, Judge Kowalski was not amused. Mr. Park, are you telling me your client based her decision on a report from someone with no relevant credentials? Dennis stammered. Your Honor, we believed he was qualified. Did anyone verify his credentials? Silence. The judge looked at Patricia. Miss Hendricks, are you the HOA president? Yes, Your Honor. Did you personally arrange for this Dr. Harrison to evaluate the property? Patricia's face was red. I did what I thought was best for the community. That is not what I asked. Did you personally arrange it? Yes. Judge Kowalski granted the injunction immediately, ordering the HOA to restore the stream to its natural flow within 7 days, and to hire a legitimate environmental engineer to assess and repair any damage to the hillside. She also ordered the HOA to pay for Dr. Sanchez's fees and my legal costs. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. Patricia did not show up to supervise the stream restoration, instead sending a work crew who seemed confused about what they were supposed to do. I ended up directing them myself, making sure they properly filled in the diversion trench and cleared the natural channel. Within hours, the stream was flowing normally through my property again, and my waterfall roared back to life. But the damage to the hillside was worse than we had initially thought. The environmental engineer the HOA was forced to hire, a firm called Rocky Mountain Environmental Services, found extensive soil saturation extending more than 100 feet down the slope. They recommended immediate installation of French drains, soil stabilization measures, and revegetation with deep-rooted native plants. The estimated cost was $75,000. The HOA called an emergency meeting to discuss the findings. Every homeowner in Meadowbrook Hills was invited, and the community center was packed. I showed up with Tom, ready for whatever Patricia might throw at me. She started the meeting by trying to blame me. As you all know, we are facing a significant expense due to erosion problems caused by unauthorized water features. I stood up immediately. That is a lie, and you know it. The room went silent. Patricia's face turned an interesting shade of purple. Excuse me. You diverted the stream yourself, I said loudly enough for everyone to hear. You did it without authorization, without any understanding of the consequences, and now you are trying to blame me for your mistake. That is absurd, she sputtered. I would never. I have security footage, I interrupted. This was a bluff. My cameras had not captured anyone digging the diversion because I had installed them after the fact. But I was betting Patricia did not know that. Her face went white. You are lying. Am I? Because I am happy to show it to everyone here. It clearly shows someone matching your description, wearing your distinctive pink rain jacket, digging in the greenbelt at night. The room erupted in murmurs. Patricia looked like she was about to faint. Robert Chen, the other board member, stood up. Patricia, is this true? I did not. I was just, she stammered. His waterfall was too loud. It was disturbing the peace of the neighborhood. The murmurs turned into angry voices. Mark Johnson stood up. His waterfall is beautiful and peaceful. You are just jealous. Other voices joined in. It turned out Patricia had made enemies throughout the neighborhood with her petty rules and power trips. The Martinsons, whose sunroom she had blocked, were there. The Feldmans, who she had fined repeatedly for having the wrong shade of beige paint, spoke up. The Rodriguezes, who she had tried to force to remove a basketball hoop, added their complaints. The meeting devolved into chaos. Patricia tried to maintain control but eventually fled, leaving the other board members to deal with the mess. Robert Chen called for an immediate vote of no confidence, and Patricia was removed as president by a margin of 47-3, but the problems were far from over. The erosion situation was getting worse, not better. 2 days after the meeting, we got a heavy rainstorm, 3 inches in about 4 hours. I watched from my deck as water poured down the hillside, creating visible streams of muddy water that flowed into the yards of houses below the greenbelt. The Parkers, whose house was directly downslope from the worst erosion, woke up to find their basement flooded with muddy water. The Hendersons next to them had a retaining wall collapse. And further down, the Thompsons' driveway was buried under 6 inches of mud and debris. The damage was extensive, and angry homeowners were demanding answers. An emergency HOA meeting was called, this time with all 5 board members present and a lawyer. They announced that the HOA's insurance had denied the claim because the damage was caused by unauthorized modifications to common property. "Who authorized the stream diversion?" demanded Carl Parker, whose basement was still flooded. Robert Chen, now acting president, looked miserable. "Patricia Hendricks diverted the stream without board approval." "Then she is personally liable," Carl said. "She needs to pay for this damage." "We are exploring our legal options," the lawyer said carefully. I stood up. "I have documentation showing I warned the board about the erosion danger before the rainstorm. I sent certified letters with photos and expert analysis." The lawyer looked at Robert. "Is this true?" "Yes," Robert admitted. "We received multiple warnings from Mr. Chen." "Then the board may also be liable for failing to act on those warnings," the lawyer said, and I could see him mentally calculating his billable hours. The meeting ended with no clear resolution, but within a week, 3 different lawsuits had been filed. The Parkers, Hendersons, and Thompsons all sued both Patricia personally and the HOA for damages. Their combined claims exceeded $200,000. I was subpoenaed to give testimony and provide my documentation. In my deposition, I laid out the entire timeline, starting with Patricia's obsessive behavior, her fake environmental report, the stream diversion, my warnings, and the subsequent damage. I provided photos, emails, certified mail receipts, Dr. Sanchez's report, and my own professional analysis. Patricia's lawyer tried to argue that I was biased because of my waterfall, but that fell apart when Tom pointed out that I was a licensed landscape architect with 15 years of experience, and no history of problems with any other HOA or municipality. The case dragged on for months. In the meantime, the HOA was forced to take out a special assessment on all homeowners to pay for the hillside repairs and temporary fixes to damaged properties. Everyone was assessed $3,000, and people were furious. Several more board members resigned, and Robert Chen was struggling to hold things together. Patricia tried to rally support, sending emails to homeowners claiming she had been unfairly targeted and that I was the real villain. But nobody was buying it. Too many people had been harmed by her actions, and the evidence was overwhelming. Then things took a darker turn. During discovery, Tom found something interesting in Patricia's financial records. She had paid Dr. Michael Harrison $3,000 for his fake environmental report, and the payment came from her personal account, not the HOA. But there were also other suspicious payments to a landscaping company called Mountain View Services. Tom dug deeper and found that Mountain View Services had been paid $15,000 by Patricia personally, with the payment memo reading Greenbelt Maintenance. But the HOA had no record of authorizing any Greenbelt work, and other board members claimed they knew nothing about it. Tom contacted Mountain View Services and spoke with the owner, a guy named Jake Morrison. At first, Jake was reluctant to talk, but when Tom explained that there were lawsuits and potential criminal charges involved, he got more cooperative. "Patricia hired us to dig a trench in the Greenbelt," Jake admitted. "She said it was approved HOA work to improve drainage. She showed us where to dig and how to direct the water. We did the work over 2 nights, maybe 8 hours total." "Did she tell you why the work needed to be done at night?" "She said it was to avoid disturbing residents during the day, which seemed reasonable for HOA work." Tom got a sworn statement from Jake, which he immediately turned over to the police. This was no longer just a civil matter. Patricia had used HOA common property without authorization, hired contractors using personal funds while claiming it was HOA business, and created a situation that caused significant property damage. This was fraud and possibly criminal mischief. Detective Sarah Morrison, no relation to Jake, was assigned to the case. She was a sharp woman in her early 40s who had apparently dealt with HOA disputes before. She interviewed me, Tom, Jake Morrison, and multiple board members. She also subpoenaed Patricia's financial records and emails. What she found was even worse than we thought. Patricia had not only diverted my stream, but she had also been embezzling HOA funds for years. She had set up fake vendor accounts, approved payments to companies that did not exist, and pocketed thousands of dollars. The total amount was still being calculated, but initial estimates suggested she had stolen more than $50,000 over a 4-year period. The embezzlement charges were serious, but the property damage was what really got her in trouble. Colorado law treats criminal mischief involving property damage over $5,000 as a felony. The combined damages from the flooded basements, collapsed retaining walls, and erosion repairs exceeded $200,000, putting Patricia in serious legal jeopardy. She was arrested on a Thursday morning. I watched from my deck as police cars pulled up to her house 2 streets over. She was led out in handcuffs, still wearing her workout clothes, looking shocked and diminished. It was almost sad, seeing someone who had wielded so much petty power brought down so completely. The arrest made local news. HOA president arrested for fraud and property damage was the headline in the Boulder Daily Camera. The story detailed Patricia's obsessive behavior, the stream diversion, the resulting erosion and damages, and the embezzlement charges. Several of my neighbors were interviewed, all expressing shock and anger. Patricia's lawyer tried to negotiate a plea deal, but the district attorney was not interested in going easy on her. The amount of money involved and the number of victims made this a case they wanted to prosecute fully. Her trial was set for 6 months out, and she was released on bail with conditions that she have no contact with any Meadowbrook Hills residents and stay away from the neighborhood entirely. In the meantime, the civil cases moved forward. With the criminal charges filed and the evidence Tom had gathered, Patricia's civil lawyer advised her to settle. The 3 families whose homes were damaged received settlements totaling $180,000. Patricia's homeowner's insurance covered some of it, but she was personally on the hook for more than $100,000. She had to sell her house to pay. The HOA also settled with the affected families, paying for repairs and temporary housing expenses. The special assessment ended up being $5,000 per household instead of $3,000, which nobody was happy about, but at least the situation was being resolved. The hillside repairs took 3 months. Rocky Mountain Environmental Services brought in heavy equipment, installed extensive drainage systems, stabilized the soil, and replanted the entire slope with native vegetation. It was expensive and disruptive, but when they were done, the hillside was actually more stable than it had been before Patricia's interference. My waterfall continued to flow beautifully throughout all of this. The stream ran clear and strong, and I would sit on my deck in the evenings listening to the water and reflecting on how badly things had gone wrong. All because one person could not handle someone else having something nice. Patricia's criminal trial was held the following spring. I testified about the timeline of events and her obsessive behavior. Jake Morrison testified about being hired to dig the trench. Multiple homeowners testified about the damages they suffered. The HOA's forensic accountant testified about the embezzlement. The trial lasted a week. Patricia's defense tried to argue that she had made errors in judgment, but had not acted with criminal intent. They claimed the stream diversion was a misguided attempt to address what she genuinely believed was a drainage problem. The embezzlement, they argued, was sloppy bookkeeping rather than intentional theft. The jury did not buy it. They convicted her on 3 counts of felony criminal mischief and 7 counts of theft. The judge was clearly unimpressed with Patricia's actions and even less impressed with her lack of remorse. During sentencing, He noted that she had held a position of trust within the community and had abused that trust repeatedly for personal gain and to pursue petty vendettas. Patricia was sentenced to 4 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 2 years. She was also ordered to pay full restitution to all victims, which totaled more than $300,000 including legal fees and repair costs. Given that she had already lost her house and exhausted most of her assets, it was unlikely she would ever fully pay that amount. The day the sentence was announced, I was working on my deck when Mark Johnson came over with a bottle of whiskey. "I figured we should toast to the end of the Patricia era," he said. We sat on my deck, listening to the waterfall and sipping whiskey. "I still cannot believe she did all that just because she was jealous of a backyard water feature," Mark said. "Some people cannot stand seeing other people happy," I replied. "She had to control everything and everyone, and when she could not control my waterfall, she tried to destroy it. Well, she destroyed herself instead. Yeah, but she took a lot of people down with her." The Parkers are still dealing with mold issues from the flooding. The Hendersons' yard is torn up from the retaining wall repairs, and we are all paying thousands in special assessments. Mark nodded. "True, but at least it is over, and your waterfall really is spectacular." The waterfall became something of a neighborhood gathering spot after everything settled down. People would walk by on evening strolls and stop to admire it. Parents would bring kids to see the water cascading over the rocks. I started hosting occasional backyard gatherings where neighbors could come enjoy the peaceful atmosphere. The new HOA board, led by David Chen, implemented major reforms. They created clear guidelines for board member authority, requiring multiple approvals for any expenditure over $1,000. They hired a professional management company to handle finances with quarterly independent audits. And they loosened many of the ridiculous restrictions Patricia had imposed, allowing reasonable modifications to properties with a streamlined approval process. My experience became something of a cautionary tale in HOA management circles. Tom Bradshaw, my lawyer, wrote an article about it for a legal journal, highlighting the dangers of unchecked board authority and the importance of proper oversight. He even presented at a conference on HOA governance, using my case as an example of how badly things can go wrong when personality disorders meet petty power. Dr. Sanchez, the hydrologist, also used the case in her teaching. She brought students from the University of Colorado to see the hillside repairs and explain how improper water management can lead to catastrophic erosion. She always made sure to show them my waterfall as well, pointing out how properly designed water features can actually improve rather than harm the environment. As for me, I finally got to just enjoy my property. The waterfall sounds accompanied my morning coffee and my evening relaxation. I expanded my landscaping, adding more native plants and creating a small meditation garden near the lower tier of the waterfall. I installed tasteful outdoor lighting that illuminated the feature at night, creating a magical atmosphere. I dated occasionally, and women always loved the waterfall. There was something romantic about sitting on the deck listening to flowing water under the Colorado stars. I eventually met someone special, a teacher named Rachel, who appreciated both the artistry of the waterfall and the absurdity of the story behind it. "So you are telling me someone went to prison because they could not handle you having a pretty backyard?" she asked the first time I told her the full story. Basically, yeah, though the embezzlement charges did not help her case. That is the most Colorado HOA story I have ever heard. We laughed about it, but there was something deeper there too. The whole experience had taught me about the importance of standing up for yourself, documenting everything, and not backing down when you know you are right. If I had caved to Patricia's initial demands and removed the waterfall, she would have won. She would have continued her petty tyranny, probably would have kept embezzling, and the erosion problem might have gone unnoticed until something even worse happened. The Meadowbrook Hills neighborhood recovered. though it took time. Property values actually increased once Patricia was gone and the new board implemented sensible policies. People who had been considering moving decided to stay. New families moved in and were pleasantly surprised to find a functional, reasonable HOA rather than the nightmare stories they had heard. The hillside, once stabilized and replanted, became a beautiful natural area. The native plants attracted birds and butterflies. Deer would occasionally wander through, and I once spotted a fox trotting along the edge of my property at dawn. The stream continued its eternal flow, just as it had for thousands of years before humans built houses here and would probably continue long after we were gone. 3 years after Patricia's arrest, I was working in my yard when a car pulled up and a woman I did not recognize got out. She was younger, maybe late 20s, and she approached hesitantly. "Are you David Chen?" she asked. "I am. I am Patricia Hendrix's daughter, Amanda. I wanted to apologize for what my mother did to you and everyone else in this neighborhood. I had not known Patricia had a daughter. You do not need to apologize for her actions. I know, but I wanted to anyway. She is getting out on parole next month, and I have been trying to understand what happened, why she did all this. Her therapist in prison says she had some kind of personality disorder, that she needed to control everything because she felt powerless in her own life. That does not excuse what she did. No, it does not, but it helps explain it, I guess. Anyway, I am not here to make excuses. I just wanted to say I am sorry and to tell you that your waterfall is beautiful. I looked at photos of it online. Mom was wrong to try to destroy it. Thank you." That means a lot. Amanda left, and I stood looking at the waterfall for a long time. People are complicated, damaged in ways that are not always visible, and sometimes that damage spills out and hurts others. Patricia had probably been miserable, her life feeling empty and meaningless, and she had tried to fill that void with power and control. When my waterfall represented something she could not have, something beautiful and peaceful and beyond her control, she had lashed out in the most destructive way possible, but the waterfall remained. The stream continued to flow. The water found its natural path, just as it always had and always would. You cannot permanently divert nature, cannot force it to conform to your small, petty desires. Eventually, reality reasserts itself, and those who fought against it are left with nothing but the consequences of their choices. I went inside and found Rachel reading on the couch. "That was Patricia's daughter," I said. "Really, what did she want to apologize? That was decent of her." "Yeah, it was." We went out on the deck together, listening to the waterfall as the sun set behind the mountains. The water caught the fading light, sparkling gold and orange and red. Birds sang their evening songs in the trees. The air was cool and clean, carrying the scent of pine and fresh water. This was what I had envisioned when I first bought this property, this moment of perfect peace and natural beauty. Patricia had tried to take it away, had nearly succeeded in destroying it, but in the end, the waterfall had survived and she had not. There is probably a lesson in that, something about how beauty endures and petty hatred consumes itself. But sitting there with Rachel, listening to the eternal sound of flowing water, I did not need to analyze it. I just needed to enjoy it, to appreciate what I had built and protected, and to be grateful that sometimes when you stand up for what is right, justice actually prevails. The waterfall flows on, just as it always has, a testament to nature's patience and humanity's capacity for both creation and destruction. And I am reminded every day, with every soothing rush of water over stone, that the best response to someone trying to destroy your peace is to protect it fiercely. Document everything, and never back down from doing what is right. The neighborhood is better now. My waterfall is beautiful. Patricia is paying for her crimes. And every evening, I sit on my deck and listen to the water, grateful for this small piece of paradise and the hard-won peace that comes with it.